welcome. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell, share the show, which a lot of you have been great about. Thank you, by the way. Thank you for listening. Let's get started. For those of you who might have caught me when I first started making episodes on this channel, I thank you, first of all. But you may remember that I had an episode, maybe two, that were about Africans and African Americans. And at the time, a lot of the stuff was cultural. And it was really just kind of a documentation of the accepted disrespect that Black Americans are supposed to take on the chin from Africans living in America. Something about those episodes told me to ease up on the Africans. And I want to revisit why. You know, I was listening to a couple of episodes of the recordings of the Twitter space conversations that Tariq Nasheed was having about what should have been a very simple question, which was, how does immigration, full stop, benefit African Americans? How does immigration benefit African Americans? And what I want to talk about first and foremost is the sound of a hit dog hollering. There's a guy named Pan-Africanism Strikes Back who's been doing exactly what I like to point out niggas do when they're on some scam shit, right, on the internet, which is when niggas are on scam shit on the internet and they're about to get called out, what they try to do is come up with a whole lot of distraction videos to change the subject. And so what I'm seeing from the dude Pan-Africanism Strikes Back, which if you make that be your screen name, you know, is a whole lot of distraction videos with a lot of time-wasting ass questions that have been the tried and true questions people use when they try to deflect from this immigration question from Black people. And one of the chief questions that Pan-Africans usually use when it comes to dealing with the immigration question, and they don't realize how this exposes them, is they'll say, how come you guys is targeting African immigration, but y'all don't say nothing about Hispanic immigration or immigration from here or immigration from there? And this episode is going to be specifically for that question, so that if anybody ever hears that question again, they'll understand that that's a time-wasting, distractor, insincere ass question. So let's use this for recap, because there's multiple answers to that question. And the first answer to that question of how come Black Americans are targeting African immigrants and no other forms of immigration is, nigga, we're not. You're lying, right? If somebody's asking you the question, how does immigration, no qualifications, no specifications, immigration, full stop, all encompassing, benefit Black Americans? If somebody asks you that question in that way and you reply back as if you heard you're targeting Africans specifically, you're being insincere. So let's start this off with a proper framing of how we got here. Okay? Because what can happen real easily, what the Africans are often want to do, is to scramble the conversation and turn this into a they're being persecuted thing. This is not an issue of anybody targeting Africans specifically. What the real issue is niggas have been targeting immigrants as a whole, and you thought you was going to get a pass. You thought you were going to be the thing that was going to change Black Americans' minds. Let's talk about how we got here with Africans versus African Americans with regards to immigration. Africans were never mentioned or named specifically. Africans, as they always do when it comes to the topic of immigration, jumped out the box on their own. This is not new. This is how ADOS got hot in the first place. ADOS got hot because Yvette Carnell finally answered a question that black folks have been asking her for a long time, which is, well, what's your solution then? They used to burn her up because she couldn't say it. She didn't have the way to vocalize it. And when she finally did, she hit it out the park. And how she vocalized it, she said, y'all want to know what my solution is? We're not going to support DACA. Once she gave black folks marching orders, niggas got to marching. And we said, bet, we're not supporting DACA. And for those of you that remember, this was at a time when the Democratic Party was making a big push for DACA. They were talking about the kids in cages. They were trying to push reparations for Hispanics whose kids had been in cages for an hour. And they kept trying to push the DREAM Act and DACA. And black folks said, we not for it. And once Hispanics realized, this is something that a lot of black folks don't know. A lot of black folks don't know that a lot of your supposedly pro-black articles and magazines and blogs are really black targeted. They're not owned by black people at all. They're usually owned by Hispanics. And they'll give you black media or what appears to be black media with black faces on it. So that when they slip in that pro-Hispanic shit, you think it's coming from your own people. You think it's coming from your own people. The Griot and the Root, those are black targeted publications that are owned by Hispanic groups. I believe one of them was bought out by Byron Allen. But a lot of those black vlogs and blogs and media outlets, those are Hispanic owned. And when they realized that all that Hispanic owned media that was used to try to buy black ideas and buy black opinions still wasn't working for getting black people to support DACA, their counter argument and all the little pro-Democrat articles that were made after that were trying to argue that immigration was a black issue. And the way they tried to make an argument that immigration was a black issue was to say, what about all these black immigrants? So to even have black Americans ask the question, how does immigration benefit black Americans? The only answer you can give them is, what about all these black immigrants? And when you give black Americans that rebuttal of what about all these black immigrants for how does immigration, full stop, benefit black Americans rebuttal to that is, what about them? You think we didn't consider the black immigrants when we're still asking, how does immigration help black people? Your only answer for that is some of them are black. And see, for black immigrants, for so long, that's been a good enough answer for black people. Because for so long, and this is why Africans living in America need Pan-Africanism. This is why Pan-Africanism is a scam. For so long, Pan-Africanism was the answer for why we allowed immigration to happen, was because, well, those are supposed to be our brothers, and it may not benefit us, but it's good to see some black folks making it. That was the answer. Because Pan-Africanism, because we're supposed to have some kind of united front with, quote unquote, our brothers, right? But what's been happening to Pan-Africanism lately? What's the average black American been seeing from our, quote unquote, African brothers living in America? Africans living in America go out of their way publicly and personally to let black Americans know they don't rock with them in any kind of way whatsoever imaginable. So if the only thing you had all this time that allowed black Americans, that made black Americans kind of just stay out of it, was that they personally liked you, and you've gone out of your way to let the world know you don't like us, what do you expect? What do you expect? There's no benefit in you being here for us. In fact, it's more of a problem. And we'll get into that in a minute. But let's be honest for a second. Name me one African country where we are allowed to do that to y'all. It took one black American, one, Art Cathy, to come in and say something you don't like in order for y'all to basically ban every black American from the Gambia. And to keep it real, she was right. Y'all are the sex tourism capital of Africa. The Gambia is the Bangkok of Africa. Y'all have an entire system where Europeans fly in and have sex with your kids. You have underage, rampant, unrepentant child sex slavery going on in your country to the point to where you are a known sex slavery tourism destination for Europeans. You don't hear no Pan-African that has a single problem with that. The Pan-Africans looked at Art Cathy when she had a bleeding heart and felt bad for the little kid that was about to be abducted and tried to stop it. Africans got mad at her because she was knocking a hustle. It took one or two black Americans in the Gambia for all of a sudden for the Gambia, who's been letting the Chinese and the Europeans take over everything in the Gambia. All of a sudden, the Gambia got a land minister. The land minister's only come out in his entire life and made one announcement. That one announcement in the entire lifetime of the Gambia, that one announcement that your newly minted land minister made was, don't sell land to the black Americans. Continue selling to the Chinese who are having sex with your children. Continue selling to the Europeans that come over here just to have sex with your children. But don't let those loudmouth black Americans come over here and start up shit. The only people you've ever stood up to in that country is black Americans. That's it. That's the only people who you guys have your guard up around. But you seem to want black Americans to allow you to do the things that you'll pick up pitchforks for if we come do to y'all. So all that brotherhood shit's out the window. You've made it clear ain't no brotherhood. So if there ain't no brotherhood, the only thing left is business. And if there ain't no brotherhood and the only thing left is business, and the business is bad, what do you expect? What do you expect? If somebody's asking you, like, let's just look at this real quick. If we're asking everybody, how does immigration benefit black Americans? And you fix it upon yourself to come jump out the gate and come riding against black Americans on behalf of immigrants. You come in, because think about it. You don't think it's weird that there's been a 12-hour debate on Twitter Spaces and not one African has produced or provided a sincere argument? You don't think that's weird? Like that nobody's been able to come up and go, well, we help with the taxes for your neighborhood. You don't think it's weird that not one African can honestly even give a stab at how that benefits? Not even African, not one person can sit back and go, well, we do bring in some delicious, authentic Mexican food that you guys seem to really like on Taco Tuesday in California. You don't think it's weird that not one person can sit here and tell you, the same people that'll swear up and down they built America. See, that should let you know right off the bat how much this is bullshit. Because if you really, 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 really believe that, you'd be able to say without a beat, well, shit, nigga, we built America for you. But Africans know better. Immigrants know better than to say that shit to black Americans because they know that's a lie. They know when they say that phrase, immigrants built America, that's just a lie they say around white folks. It's just a lie they say around white folks. If you gave immigrants the manual to America, they wouldn't know how to operate it. They didn't build shit. You guys came around. Your name, immigrant, denotes people that moved here after the place was built. If you guys were here before the place was built, they wouldn't call you immigrants. They would call you founders. You ever notice that? You immigrated to a place because it was already popping. That's why you immigrated here. You didn't build shit. And by the way, we're just talking about immigrants here at this point. Nobody's mentioned the word African. See, that's a hit dog hollering. If you walk in a room and say, I'm looking for the bitch ass nigga that owe me money, and then some dude walk, hey man, I'll get back to you next week. He just outed himself. All the people that knew they weren't bitch ass niggas and knew they didn't owe you money, they kept minding their business. You would think if somebody says, how does immigration benefit black Americans? You would think the biggest group of immigrants would be the main ones trying to respond. You would think it would be blacks versus Hispanics. But no, the Africans put themselves out there to speak on that. And the reason for that, and this is something we don't speak on, is the African living in America full and well understands that his or her value set in America is based on and around trying to erase the voice of a black American. Let's just come on out and say the shit. See, everybody else is going to tell you, no, we weren't just attacking Africans. We were attacking all immigrants. But I'm going to tell you the truth of, yes, this was about all immigrants. But since you brought up Africans, since you threw African immigrants into the mix in an attempt to squash our argument down, let me tell you what the issue is with African immigrants that's special and specific from all the others. Don't try that soul food shit about we a family. I'm over there looking at family. We all know what family did in soul food. Now, let's be honest. You know what? I'm going to keep it real with Africans. All Africans living in America, I want you guys to understand something. You can know somebody or have been around them for almost your whole life. And you can realize you never knew them in one moment. Somebody can only needs a moment to show you who they really are. And you could have been around them your whole life. You could have grew up with them. And in many cases, you don't really know a person until you see how they act in court. Just being real. You don't really know somebody until you see how they act when the chips are down. And let me tell you how Africans acted when the chips were down. Let me tell you the biggest chips were down moment for black Americans. The George Floyd protest. The George Floyd protests were the biggest put up or shut up moment for black Americans and Africans I can think of in recent times. Say what you want to say about blacks and Africans back in the day, but when shit would pop off in the 60s, niggas would be united. Niggas had mutual interest. It was war in America and it was war in Africa. And we both were looking at each other like we can be useful allies to one another. That's an alliance. Like I said before, black Americans, one of our problems is we be saying the word alliance, but be using the word friends. We be saying the word alliance with the meaning friends behind it. Friends is friends to the end. Alliances are there so long as our interests are aligned. And the second they don't align no more, that shit can be over. We could turn around and be enemies. Look at America and Russia. Look at America and Russia during World War II and immediately after. And what black Americans didn't realize was that African interest had changed. A lot of the people who we thought were mutual enemies, you done made friends with. A lot of the people who we don't rock with, those are your boys now. And you was proud to tell us that you didn't rock with us. When the George Floyd protests popped off, let's just be real. A lot of the white folks that was there in them riots and there in them protests and there in them demonstrations were more than likely just people who wanted to get out the house. People who was poor that wanted to steal some shit. People that just wanted to break some shit and get out and do things, right? We understand that. You Africans didn't even come out the house. You didn't even come off the porch. Didn't even come off the porch. And when I say that, I mean literally the only silent countries in the entire world regarding the George Floyd protest were in Africa. Africans weren't saying shit. Nigga, Japan was protesting. Germany was protesting. They had protests in Alaska. They had protests in Israel, and we know Israel's racist as shit. So I'm saying I understand a lot of that shit was phony gestures, but they were gestures because people know when they have to show respects. Africans were silent as shit, and it was so bad. Shout out to Dr. Mumbi. She was the only Pan-African that kept it real and pointed it out and just said, look, I know y'all can see we ain't doing shit. I know you can. Let's be honest when I say doing shit. No one was expecting Africa to raise hell and start fighting their armies and no one was expecting any of that shit. It's not realistic. What we're talking about is what do they call this stuff? They call it a demonstration of solidarity. A demonstration of solidarity. You niggas got 1.5 something billion people in your countries, 54 different countries. God knows how many different tribes and dialects. And out of all of that, you had two niggas in Liberia that said anything about George Floyd. Now, what do you think a demonstration of solidarity means? That means if white folks see niggas suffering in America and protesting, and they turn around and see African countries protesting, they're like, damn, you piss off one of them, you piss off all of them. It's a demonstration of solidarity. We stand with, right? So what do you think it means if everybody else in the world is saying we stand with the family of George Floyd, we stand against injustice, and Africa's like, we gonna sit this one out? What do you think that means? Now, again, shout out to Dr. Mumbi for keeping it real, but let's analyze what her reasoning was for why Africans weren't saying shit. She said, we're too beat down in our own countries to be free enough to say anything. Now, you point out one African country that has the world's leading technology or the world's most efficient army. It's usually a bunch of sweaty niggas in outdated military uniforms and batons. Half of them barely have enough guns. And we know half of them barely have enough guns because they barely have enough guns to stop a couple of rebels from stealing all their daughters. But you got enough power to keep 80 million people in check. No, what that means is your people are broken down. And what that really means is your people could not be moved or motivated enough to even be brought to action on this. In other words, you don't stand in solidarity with us. Now, that's in your own countries, right? Now let's talk about how the Africans who have made it to America act towards Black Americans when the George Floyd protest went down. You had goddamn Africans on CNN. And again, let's go back. I made the joke about this before, but it bears repeating. When the George Floyd protests were going on, you couldn't even really find Black Americans because we was all active out in the street. CNN couldn't even interview Black. CNN, for those of you who don't know, is based in Atlanta. Do you know how hard it is to not find a Black American in Atlanta? That's how busy it was. So if you go back and you look at CNN and you go look at MSNBC during the George Floyd protest, everybody you see them interviewing who's Black is an African. And they're all saying the same things. We don't associate with these niggas. These niggas are wildin'. We're well behaved. We don't stand with these people. When we come to America, we're told not to even look at these niggas. There was a Ghanaian woman that said being associated with Blacks, this is during the George Floyd protest when you're seeing on loop a man begging for his life while some old middle-aged white man who would never approach this nigga in the streets if he didn't have a badge and a gun is sitting on his chest, right? We're sitting there forced to watch that shit on loop. And this bitch is on CNN talking about how being associated or even confused with Black Americans is akin to being stuck in one terrible pot. Basically saying we don't like being associated with these niggas either. And this is how Africans were moving when they thought things were going to go bad for black people during the George Floyd protest. That's why y'all was moving like that. The only thing worse than a real enemy is a fake friend. Ain't nothing worse than everybody thinks you about to get beat up by a nigga. And the nigga who you thought was your friend is slowly distancing himself from you. Oh, I don't really know this nigga like that. If you beat that nigga up, man, I don't really rock with him like that, man. And then you win the fight. And then you knock the nigga out, you win the fight. And now that same fake ass friend that was trying to distance himself from you, who was trying to get in the car and get the car warmed up and get out of there, now he over there talking about, that's my dog. Nigga, get out of my face. That was Africans. Africans was making it clear. We don't associate with these niggas. We don't know why they're acting up like that. Oh, it worked? Oh, they got a conviction? Oh, the white folks are bending to their will? Now, I want y'all to remember. Because if any of y'all follow me on YouTube, you probably follow me from Twitter. I had a Twitter presence before they took my account out. And if y'all remember around that time, what immediately followed after George Floyd? They had to do with Africa. The Africans was just online. The Africans living in America was just online talking about how black Americans can become a hashtag and the police can easily take your life and this, that, and the third. And then not but 2 weeks later, because God don't like ugly, not but 2 weeks later, them same Nigerians was on the exact same Al Gore's internet begging the exact same black Americans to help them stop SARS. So the Africans that could not be moved to say shit on behalf of black Americans when it was time to show solidarity, these same Africans who was talking shit about us suffering police brutality and saying, we do not have that in Africa, you broke a kata. You are getting killed by white police, right? Now, all of a sudden, here these same niggas come with their hat in their hand talking about they get police brutality in Africa too by their own African police. And you want us to help you. You want us to help you stop a tragedy that's going on in a part of the country, in a part of the world that don't nobody give a shit about. You want us to bring attention to your plight when you was on CNN talking about how y'all didn't rock with us, how we're misbehaved and unruly. You want these same misbehaving, unruly wildcats who are far from home to come help you? You royal African? You royal Wakandan? You need a lowly Akata's help? You should have seen how desperate they were. Please, black American, we need Beyonce. They was really trying to reach Beyonce like we all know Beyonce. like what are you doing? I thought a minute ago we was all kinds of Akata slave rape babies and you sold us for mirror and you sold us for gunpowder. Why don't you use some of that gunpowder to fight those corrupt police, my nigga? I just want to recap because people come at black Americans with no sense of irony, with no sense of shame, with acting like we don't remember the shit y'all was talking. People who hold grudges against black Americans for shit that was said to you in the third grade expect us to let go that y'all was going to let us die here in damn race riots over George Floyd. Never forget how many Africans was trying to go back to Africa when the George Floyd riots was popping off. How many Africans was joking, but not joking, about how I'm ready to leave. The second shit go bad. Think about this for a second. And this is something that'll never stop irritating me. Where did the George Floyd situation first pop off at? Minnesota, home to the biggest Somali refugee camp in the world. There's so many Somalis fleeing from their country and escaping to Minneapolis, Minnesota, that you have a representative in Congress there. You have to have a large groundswell of numbers to win a congressional seat. You have a House district. A nigga died on your watch. On your watch. In the biggest population you have in the country, and ain't nobody hear from you during the protest. So that means all you niggas packed up all your sheets and shit and went inside. All you niggas hid during the entire George Floyd protest. And then when it looked like African Americans was getting somewhere, here come you niggas trying to throw shit on the list. Hey, if Black Lives Matter, then what about Mbuku? No, nigga, you niggas was hiding. You niggas was hiding the whole time. The only two people that's going to get love now is them two Liberian niggas that stood up when there wasn't no benefit to it. Those was the only niggas who stood up. A lot of you little Pan-African cruise ticket selling ass niggas was thinking about how you were going to benefit off of that shit. There's a YouTube woman named Roida Ure from Liberia. And if you go back and you look at the time when the George Floyd riots was going down and niggas was getting killed in the street for standing up for what was going on, that woman said, good, maybe some of them will move to Liberia now. So you're happy. You're happy that your people, Roida Ure from goddamn Detroit, Michigan. She got family from Liberia, but she born and raised in Detroit, goddamn Michigan, amongst Black Americans. Niggas done shielded you. Niggas done taught you shit. Niggas done made it safe for you to be around in America. Now you're old enough and of age and you can tap into your Liberian half and you can move back to Liberia and go back and forth and all that. That's cool. No one's mad about that for you. But you hear the news of people in America, was supposed to be your Black people suffering in America. And you have such a detachment from us, despite having lived amongst us your whole life. You got such a detachment from us that you don't even have to bat an eye at the idea of the suffering going on, because you can see a benefit for who you consider to be your real people in Liberia. That's fucking weird. That's weird. Despite how I may feel about Nigerians, right? I wouldn't consider it a win if some tragedy befell the country of Nigeria that caused the Nigerians to behave in a way that I liked. Like if all of a sudden all the Nigerians were going back home because some big tragedy happened, there's some big hurricane or earthquake in Nigeria, and everybody that gets on my nerves from Nigeria that lives in America is going back home, I wouldn't be like, yeah, this big ass tragedy happened. I'd be like, damn, I didn't want that to happen. She was completely cool with the idea of niggas being terrorized to the point of considering fleeing their country because it might benefit hers. That's how detached these people were during the George Floyd riots. But you expect us to drop our hats and pick up weapons for you niggas to fight SARS in Nigeria when there's 200 million of y'all. That doesn't make any kind of sense. And rather than acknowledging, you see, me, if I got a group of people that normally have my back and they normally rocking with me 10 toes down, and then one day they not rocking with me at all, that's going to make me want to ask, what did I do so bad that made this 110% loyal person not rock with me no more? What did I do? Is it something that I said, right? And I'm going to be honest with the African immigrant. Somewhere along the lines, I believe you messed up the count and thought you had the numbers. I think somebody might have told you wrong, to quote Dragonfly Jones, and it had you feeling like now you could reveal how you really feel about Black Americans. Didn't nobody ask you niggas to go make Bob Hart's Abishola, a show that flat out verbalizes African vitriol and hatred for black Americans and tries to normalize it? You see, I'm the type of nigga that when somebody types something on Twitter, when somebody types something online, I don't just look at what that person said to say, oh, this is what this group of people think about X, Y, and Z. I look at what that person said, and then I look at the ratio of agreements to disagreements and likes to dislikes and retweets. And if I look and I see in your comment section that it's piles upon piles of your countrymen or people from your culture and your circle co-signing what you said and liking it and retweeting it and big upping it, nigga, that's how y'all feel. Let's keep it real. I can't say something crazy about black American people in a black American circle and everybody just rock around and agree with the shit unless that's how people feel. And if you look at how most Africans feel unprovoked, you could have Africans living in America act a lot like white folks living in the most racist parts of America, to where you can be in a white circle, you can just be observing where they don't even know a black person's there and ain't no black people around. And the real racist ones will still be chomping nigger and talking about how much they can't stand black folks without nary a black person around. And if you look at most African circles, they do the same shit because that's how they identify themselves living in America. It's the same thing as an old white person living in America. At least I'm not a nigger. That's what keeps you going. Your whole identity is tied to that. But the thing about you that's different from everybody else that has to live by, sleep with, and eat to survive, at least I'm not a nigger. The difference with you is when niggers come around, you got to pretend to be one of us. See, let me explain something that most black Americans won't say when people ask that dumbass question, why just black Americans? Now, my first answer wasn't just black Americans. Wasn't just Africans. We said immigration as a whole, and you heard Africans because you know your position is threatened. That's the real reason why Africans be jumping out the box trying to defend immigration. They know that the second people start asking, hey, wait a minute, how does this even benefit us? They just punch their ticket. You know that's a problem for you, but you can't answer how it benefits you. You can't say there's any brotherhood. You've shown there's absolutely no brotherhood at all. We can depend on you we all got family members and friends that maybe they do a lot that irritates us or pisses us off. But we know that if the chips are down and when the shit really goes down, they'll have our backs. There's family members I got right now. They may not be that good with money. You know what I'm saying? They might need money every now and then. They may not be the most responsible person in the world. But if I called that nigga up right now and said, these niggas down the street is tripping, they on their way with no questions asked. And that's more valuable to me. That's how I know somebody's my family, how somebody got my back. You know what I'm saying? A friend in need is a friend indeed. But when you got somebody to where your only symbolism, your only instances of brotherhood are symbolic. Your only instances of brotherhood are demonstrations and shows of solidarity. And over time, the newest generation of y'all can't even do that. Ain't no point in you. Ain't no point in you being around. Africans are too quick to show whenever an opportunity arises that they riding with the other side. They came in and thought that how the game works is to act like every other immigrant and distance yourselves from the black Americans. No, nigga, that's not how it worked for your black ass, and you played yourself. You played yourself. And I started seeing one too many Africans. See, when people think that you're weak, That's when they feel they can be honest, because what are you going to do about it? And I really feel like Africans lost track of the count. I don't think you've been paying attention to black society. You don't really hang around black people like that, so you wouldn't really know what we're really thinking or really up to or how we're really moving. You just see TV. And if you're the average African and you look on TV and you notice that most of the black people on television now are Africans, not black Americans, and you look in politics and you realize that most of the politicians that are black are Africans. They're smiling Africans that'll do whatever white folks say. And they're not the regular domesticated black American coons. And you might start messing around and thinking that you've taken over. And even that phrase that I would hear Africans use a lot when they thought they had the number. Oh, we're coming and we're taking over. Think about the language of that. They're not saying we're coming to reinforce you. We're coming to join forces with you. When Mexicans see other Mexicans coming into America, they're thinking, oh, we're building our numbers up. When Asians see other Asians coming into America, they're like, we're getting our numbers up. When black Americans see other Africans coming into America, we know that they're coming in with the mentality of we're taking over from you. How does that benefit us? And then worse still, like Africans often do, you messed it up. You fumbled the bag. You moved too early. You started think about it. If Africans were smart, the Nigerian community would have made them take Bob Hart's Abishola down. You couldn't do that shit anywhere else in Africa. Imagine being in South Africa and the Nigerians put Bob Hart's Abishola out in South Africa where you're dissing South Africans and shit. You'd be set on fire. It don't take much in Africa for Africans to see other Africans as a threat. You'd be set on fire. There's a reason why, if you go anywhere in Africa and they think you're a Nigerian, they won't even help you. They don't even like you. That's other Africans. That you can't blame that on white folks. You can't say, the Akadas did it. That's Nigerians. You can't say when the police pull me over, they don't know if I'm Ghanaian or if I'm Nigerian. No, the Ghanaians know you're Nigerian. So this issue we're having with a lot of these African immigrants, and keeping it real, most time it's Nigerians, it's not unique to us. Keeping it real, this is sad to say. Oftentimes in my experiences, one point of camaraderie that I often find with other Africans is when they find out I'm not Nigerian. That's usually the biggest icebreaker with an African is, are you Nigerian? No. Oh, thank God. Those niggas ain't shit. You won't believe how often I hear that. Or maybe you will. But the short, simple answer to why African immigrants is you niggas. Here's the difference between African immigrants and every other immigrant living in the country. Every other immigrant living in the country, it's fuck the black Americans coming in the door. We know. You ain't coming here we don't have some shared kin history of struggle. When the Mexicans come in, they tried to pretend to be our friend with the whole black and brown shit, but as soon as they got their numbers up, they dropped that shit. We know what it is with them. We know what it is with the LGBTQ and the women's group. We know they're just using us. You niggas came in on some brotherhood shit. That's something that Africans don't understand. You weren't supposed to be allowed in the country. When they're talking about America is a melting pot, no, that's bullshit. America was supposed to be a spot where they could try to get white numbers up. America was supposed to be a safe space for white people to get their numbers up. That's why whenever their numbers would fall off, they'd immigrate, they'd bring in some more white immigrants. This is why they had African and Chinese exclusion acts. They didn't want y'all mixing y'all non-white ass genes into this melting pot. It's not a melting pot. It's a smelting pot. Melting pot is for melting all these different things together. Smelting pot is to get all these elements in one thing and melt away all the things that you consider impurities so that you can get that one thing you wanted. They were trying to get Irish and Italian and Welsh and white Anglo-Saxon Protestant all together in an environment where you could blend just the right combination and get a new white nation in the Western Hemisphere. That was the goal. All you Johnny-come-lately ass niggas, y'all niggas are benefiting from some laws that we got passed. Didn't have shit to do with you. Now, the one thing that Africans have unique to all other forms of immigrant that is most detrimental to Black Americans, and this is me saying this, is that unlike any other group of people, you can pretend to be us and speak on our behalf politically. And we see this all the time. We see this all the time. This is why they're saying Kamala Harris is the first African American vice president, despite the fact that she's not African American. African American literally means anybody Black. Hell, technically, African American, according to Africans, means anybody who's not a white male. Because technically, politically speaking, African American has been turned into a phrase that just means minority. And anybody can benefit from minority that's not a white male. You can be a white female from Nova Scotia, blonde haired and blue eyed, and be like, I am a minority, despite the fact that there's more white women than white men. You've never been a minority. You've been marginalized, arguably. Really, you've just been the beneficiary of white supremacy. You haven't really had to do anything. But if you want to make the argument that you're marginalized, sure. But minority, you've got a big ass voice. You got a big ass political speaking voice. Africans do not unite with Black Americans when they come to America, as evidenced by the fact that you can jump out the box against Black Americans for immigration. You would think if there was some sort of Black solidarity, that this would be the part where the Africans are like, you know what, we're going to stay out of this and we'll let the Hispanics deal with this immigration shit because we can't be looking weak. We can't show weakness like there's no unity between the Black folks. No, you have no problem jumping out the box against Black people. You thought you was going to punk us into being quiet about immigration. You thought it was going to go Black Americans going, hey, how does immigration really benefit Black people? And you thought you was going to come out and go, well, I'm an immigrant and I'm Black, so shut your mouth. And we were going to go, oh, my bad, Mr. Haitian. Nigga, please. Again, how do you benefit me? How does you coming over here looking like me but speaking against me benefit me? How does you coming over here getting the mic and saying we don't need reparations when you're not we, how does that benefit me? Like, just like honestly ask that question and then ask yourself why, when somebody asks you that, do you respond with go ahead and declare a war? I've really heard a nigga from Kenya tell Tariq that go ahead and declare a war. So you mean to tell me if a nigga asked you, hey man, you got that money that I let you borrow? You got that money back? Your response back is go ahead and start a war. Because you know you ain't got that money and you know you didn't have no intentions on paying me back. If somebody asks you a simple question like, how do you benefit me? And your response back is to insult me and threaten me, that means clearly you know the jig is up and you never benefited me. The scam has been exposed. And now you're mad about it. Let me tell you something else that should be very, very telling about the African immigrant's position on a basic question like this. You ever notice that the second you ask an African a simple question like, how does immigration, full stop, benefit Black Americans, that the first place they usually take the conversation is to violence? You don't find that concerning that, like, nobody mentioned any kind of violence whatsoever, but simply asking, how does this relationship work for us, turns into go ahead and start a war, turns into you're causing division, you're stoking division flames. This is dangerous speak. Now here's something that you should think about. That kind of talk, simply asking the question, does this benefit us, would only be considered dangerous speak if you knew that your existence here is on shaky ground, right? If you know that the reason you're here is solid and ain't nobody gonna do shit to you and you have a good reason to be here, somebody asking you that question, you don't feel threatened at all because you're like, shit, it's self-evident. Nigga, like, here's how I benefit you, man. We're brothers, and here's this, that, and the third. And you wouldn't feel threatened by that. But if somebody's asking you, hey, man, how is this relationship? How is this business relationship? How is this proposal? How is the status of this thing working out for us? We need to renegotiate this contract. What's up? And your first reaction is to try to make it go violent. What's on your mind? And let me tell you the reason why a lot of Africans do that. See, what they don't like to tell you is that not only is there no solidarity with Africans amongst Black Americans when they come to America, but there's no solidarity amongst Africans in Africa at all. And that's why Africans take so much pride in their tribes, because it gives them a reason to not identify with other Africans that they'll do dirty. Now, I've mentioned this twice about Nigerians being set on fire in South Africa, but no one's going to tell you why. What Nigerians will tell you is, oh, it's a shame because we can't be brothers and there's so much hate between Africans and, oh, we need to stop this tribalism. Bullshit. What happened in South Africa didn't have shit to do with no tribalism. What happened in South Africa is what happens everywhere in Africa, which is white folks know they can move in some other Africans from any other part of Africa that are willing to do shit for cheap or damn near for free. And they were using Nigerians coming into South Africa to do work and not hire South Africans, to keep the local Africans poor. That's what was really going on. And Nigerians, rather than show any brotherly love, solidarity, were more than happy to play into that shit for a few dollars and be played against their own brothers in South Africa. This is why no matter how many millions upon millions of Africans you have in any of them countries, they'll always be fighting each other and be subservient to just a few white folks, because the white folks can turn them on each other's heads like it's nothing. And that same energy is brought over here, where they'll do anything for a couple of bucks and a generator. Let's just keep it real. Let's just keep it real. If people are telling you, right? If people are telling you right from jump, we're told before we even get here that we are not to associate with you as conditions of our stay here. Well, then right there, you know that ain't your friend. He can't be there. So when people ask you, why are we coming after Africans? When all we asked was, how does immigration benefit Black Americans? Know that those people asking that question are full of shit. Know that when people keep calling up, I sat back and I tolerated about 3 hours of the show. And what I saw was a pattern of somebody calling up saying, why are you mad because Africans taking your job? And niggas would go, nobody's mad because of that. Next question. Next question. Why are you mad because African taking your job? No one said that. Next question. Next question. Why are you mad because African take? And what that tells you is this. If person A keeps saying something and person B keeps hearing something that person A didn't say, then that simply means person B ain't listening. Right? Person B ain't listening, and person B ain't worth talking to.
This is why Karens say, let me speak to your manager. I'm not going to waste time going back and forth with the fry chief because my fries ain't hot. Let me go talk to the manager, somebody who can get something done, somebody who calls the shots around here, somebody who's not a glorified robot. Let me speak to your manager. Let me speak to the head nigga in charge. And the Africans that already let black folks in America know they only answer to white liberals. So if you want the African in check, you got to go check the white liberal. And what Africans don't understand, because many of them haven't been here that long, and they don't really know how the country's politics works, they don't understand that the white liberal is wholly and solely dependent on the black American vote. So again, in closing, when somebody asks the goofy ass question about what about all these other immigrants, when y'all know you can scroll 2-3 episodes back, and I got a whole episode talking about how all the Afghan immigrants are snitches. I got a whole episode breaking down how America uses immigration policies as witness protection program for its intelligence agencies. So ain't nobody over here under any disillusions or under any illusions about immigration and how it affects black Americans negatively. You jumped out the box trying to ride for every African in the world, which, as a side note, I'm swearing that niggas coming to America, like, isn't niggas moving from Africa to America the exact opposite of Pan-Africanism? I thought it was called the Back to Africa movement. You notice that? Niggas is trying to convince you. A nigga who calls himself a Pan-Africanism strikes back is trying to convince you that a bunch of niggas leaving Africa is Pan-African. Get the fuck out of here. This is the shit I'm talking about. When you see Africans moving to America from Africa, those aren't Pan-Africans. Those are globalists. They're never moving back to Africa. All the Africans living in America right now, their worst nightmare would be some Pan-African dude being elected president. They'd be terrorized. The day some Pan-African black American became the president and he shows up at the inaugurational speech with a goddamn dashiki on and he's talking about moving back to the motherland, Africans would assassinate that nigga. Africans would do it. They'd take him out. You ain't moving us back to that shithole. Go look at how nervous Liberians were when Donald Trump was about to move them back to Liberia. Terrified. A lot of the Africans that live here in America are the sons and daughters and grandsons of corrupt politicians and businessmen that done skipped out them countries in the dead of night. They ain't trying to go back. They know what's waiting for them back there. So quit asking that dumbass question and insinuating that dumbass narrative that ADOS or FBA is only going after Africa. Y'all niggas jumped out the box thinking this was going to shut the conversation down about immigration and black Americans, and it didn't. It didn't. Don't ever put yourself out there as an ultimatum and you ain't 100% sure that ultimatum going to work. You make yourself look stupid. You look like Neil Young. Well, if you don't do things my way, then I'm out of here. Okay, bye. All right. Okay, bye. That's what happened to Africans. Y'all tried to hop out the box and represent the immigrants thinking that was going to change niggas' minds, and it didn't change shit. That's how we got to Africans versus African Americans. Y'all could have held back a lot of that vitriol. We just sat back and let y'all talk all y'all shit. And this whole time, y'all thought that the reason why y'all was able to talk shit was because y'all had the numbers. This whole time, we was letting y'all hang yourself. Everything's being held everything's been recorded and held in evidence. All the shit you was talking to Sarah and Sensei at the little grapevine videos and shit, You never paid that woman for all that shit. She's the one made y'all hot. All the shit you used to talk about black Americans on the goddamn grapevine. See, this is the real reason why they got mad at Tariq and the whole Twitter Spaces thing. Africans normally love, if you look up, and I believe I said this on another video, but it's been a while. If you look up Africans versus African Americans or any discussion of that like, those kind of conversations are always dominated by Africans. Those kind of conversations are always, if you look up those videos right now, they're going to be all videos made by Africans or Pan-Africans, which is the same thing, because those are anti-black Americans. You look up those type of videos, they're always phrased in a very insincere way, right? How come black Americans and Africans don't get along? I mean, it's not our fault. We're just so educated and the black Americans can't keep up. They're always phrased in very insincere, venomous, kind of biting ways. And the reason why they don't like these recent conversations is because they're black American dominated platforms and circles. It's spots where it's a whole bunch of African Americans in the room. And we can shut down a lot of them bullshit narratives y'all put up. That's why y'all don't like these conversations. There's such a thing, and I almost feel like maybe this needs to be a separate conversation. I'm trying to keep some of these videos a little shorter so I can put out more content in a more consistent basis. But there used to be such a phrase, if you're old enough. I guess you would call it the chat room now or the meeting room. But back in the olden days, they used to call it the water cooler. Boy, I sound old. Back before Corona, young kids, human beings used to gather at places called workspaces, right? And we used to actually go in person into work. And when we would go in person into work, human beings used to drink water. And when you would drink water, one of the spots that human beings would often drink water at together would be the water cooler. There'd be a tub of water. You get a cup of water, go to the fountain, whatever. And because this was a spot where everybody would commune, this would become a communal place for conversation. Casual conversation about the workplace, the home, just life in general, society would happen at the water cooler. That's why they call it water cooler conversations. Just stuff off the record, casual conversation, but usually could give you good insight into how people are thinking. Water cooler conversations would be how human beings would get consensus on things. How do we all feel about this or that? What you're witnessing now with these Twitter spaces, with these Twitter conversations, with these basic questions and the subsequent reactions from outsiders, this is a water cooler conversation. And black Americans are starting to realize, see, there's something called, and I might be paraphrasing here, it's called the Abilene Paradox. Used to be a video I had to watch back in school called The Road to Abilene. And to paraphrase, what it was basically about was how most people don't want to rock the boat. Nobody really wants to be, quote unquote, that guy, right? If everybody's saying, yeah, pizza's fine, but deep down, you don't like pizza, you're probably still going to go along with it and say pizza's fine because nobody wants to be that one guy in the room that's saying, I want to change this for everybody. And then, as often is discussed in the Abilene Paradox, you realize the more everybody communicates that nobody really wanted pizza, but everybody was being quiet and going along with what they thought was the will of the majority of the people. How this relates to black Americans with regards to immigration is that most black Americans really deep down really aren't pro-immigration. But most black Americans, because there's great effort in making sure we don't talk to each other, most black Americans have been made to believe that, well, everybody's pro-immigration and you're just a big mean racist if you're not for it. But the more black Americans are having these discussions on these open chat boards, the more black Americans are having this water cooler talk, the more they're starting to realize, hey, we're not really for immigration. And that's a big fear that the Democratic Party has. The Democratic Party puts a lot of effort into speaking on the behalf of black people and into keeping black people uninterested in their own self-interest. That's the whole hustle of the Democratic Party. That's why whenever black people start talking about, you ever notice whenever any other group starts telling the Democratic Party what they want and how they're not happy, the Democratic Party will come back and give them what they said they wanted. Whenever black people tell the Democratic Party we're unhappy or what we want, the Democratic Party has appointed black people to come down and tell us how what they've already done is good enough for us, right? How what they're doing already as policy for other people will have a trickle-down effect for us. They can't tell us what they're going to do for us. People don't really think about that. But as black people are starting to have these water cooler conversations with ourselves, we're starting to realize we've been had. It's like sitting down and talking to all your coworkers and finding out how much everybody's getting paid so you can see the pattern of the underpay. The people who are scamming all of you, they don't like that. They don't like you talking to each other. A lot of Africans know this, and a lot of Africans for a long time. See, normally we don't even ask, who are you? That's something that makes them real nervous. An African immigrant's effectiveness comes solely from being able to blend in with us. No other group can do that. There's a lot of effort. I just talked to you about Hispanic-owned, black-targeted media outlets. Now, the second that becomes a known thing in the black community, all the money spent and invested on those media outlets is lost because they're not going to be effective no more because we know now. That's the same way it is being an African immigrant. It's very effective to be an African immigrant living in America when you can walk around. I mean, they tell you the game plan right there. When the police pull me over, they don't ask if I'm an African or if I'm a black American or not. African immigrants are the only black people who get to live their life in a closet until they decide to come out. They get to have the best of both worlds. So coming up with a system that makes black Americans look at black Africans now, because once you look and pay attention, you can easily tell who's who. Now, when a black person starts saying some coon shit, it's going to make a black person go, well, where are you from? And when that person says Nigeria, oh, okay. Everything they say, it doesn't matter what they think on this subject because they're not even a black American. That's what they're afraid of. Like I said earlier, the second you make ADOS, you make non-ADOS. The second you make FBA, you make non-FBA. It's an exclusive term, which means some people qualify, some people don't. And that scares the shit out of a lot of African immigrants because their entire identity, all their validity is tied from being able to pretend to be us in America. So I just wanted to make this little episode to cut the legs out from under because I can already see. I looked over and I started to notice a bunch of bullshit coming from a lot of the Pan-Africans. And what you're going to see is a bunch of, well, how come this person hustled that person? Well, this person's a scam artist. Well, that person, no. Let's not distract from the conversation. How does immigration benefit black Americans? And if somebody tries to hit you with that, how come you're targeting Africans and not these other groups shit? Simply ask them, okay, how does any immigration benefit black Americans? And the first thing that they'll tell you to bring the Africans back at the forefront and prove my point is their only answer to say how it benefits black Americans is to tell you that some of those immigrants are black. we've officially cracked the hustle. We see the scam, we see the jig, and we know what it is now. So now it's a question of how are they going to counter? Signing out.